afternoon, everybody, and welcome to a 21st-century rail hub. Now, I was in this morning's session where we were hearing a lot about the history and the huge innovation of rail back in the 1800s and the huge impact that it had on York and the city and the region. I recognise a lot of faces from this morning, so there's a lot of people who know their history and have heard all the exciting things that happened in the 1800s. So I know there's lots of rail enthusiasts in the audience, but how many of you are York residents? That's a lot, and that's fantastic. So I'm also a York resident. I've been a York resident for over 30 years now, and I think we are extraordinarily lucky because we're living in a city which is about to experience that same excitement of innovation because of the huge regeneration site that we have at York Central. And so that's what this session is all about. But in particular, it's about the rail aspect of that. And we're going to hear from three of the key people who were involved in this. We're going to hear from James Farrar from the York and North Yorkshire Combined Authority, Allan Cook from York Central, and David Boot from LNER. So we've got some of the key people who are involved to tell us a little bit about their perspectives. So before we get into their sort of 5-minute pitches, I'm going to ask each of them just to stand up briefly and just explain who they are and what their sort of what their role is, and I guess what brings them to be sharing Saturday afternoon with us before we go into their 5-minute pitches. So James, over to you first.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm James Farrar. I'm the Chief Executive of the York and North Yorkshire Combined Authority. If that means nothing to you, about a year ago, you elected a mayor for York and North Yorkshire called David Scaife. The Combined Authority is the bit that supports the mayor, so it's my job to deliver on the mayor's vision for the region. And the reason I'm here today and that it's important is that we're responsible for the economic plan, the economic ambition for York and North Yorkshire, and rail innovation plays a core part of that.
My name's Allan Cook. I'm founder of a family-run developments business, Arlington Real Estate. We're working in joint venture with another property company, McLaren Property, and we will be delivering York Central on behalf of the landowners. And the reason I was here on a Saturday was Joan Concannon promised me a nice lunch and a chat. I didn't realise I was having a chat in front of so many people. But, so please be kind when the question session starts.
This is a seriously good chat. David.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm David Boot. I'm Head of Public Affairs at LNER. My role at LNER is to engage with stakeholders, so political stakeholders, our business groups, community groups as well. And part of my role is also thinking about how we engage with school groups. So we also have an eye on the next generation of people joining the rail industry, not just LNER, but the wider rail industry as well. But delighted to talk about York as a rail hub, and I'll go on to explain why York is so important to us as an organisation, but also the wider rail industry as well. Thank you.
And just to perhaps explain why I'm here on a Saturday afternoon, which probably also has a lot to do with Joan Concannon. I'm Sarah Thompson. I'm the Pro-Vice-Chancellor for Research here at the university, and hence the university is also hugely excited about working with our colleagues for the benefit of York. So I'm also excited to hear what our three speakers are going to say. So over to you, James, if you'd like to take your place for 5 minutes.
Thank you. So why York, why rail and why innovation is really the question for this. And obviously York has an incredibly proud rail history. It's been obviously involved in the industry since its formation. It is the best connected rail city outside of London. You can get to 8 of the 10 largest cities in the UK with a direct train in less than 2.5 hours. So York has a great position on the rail. More importantly than that, Network Rail own the asset, the infrastructure around rail, and their Eastern office, so the bit that covers the whole of the east of the UK, their Eastern operating office is in York, which is fantastic. Because that means we have the organisation that owns the asset, and if we want our trains to be more reliable and better, we need to sort the infrastructure out and make it more reliable, and we need to innovate, and therefore the organisation that's going to be driving that innovation has a main base based in York. But if you're going to innovate, you don't just need the asset and network rail there. For innovation to really drive the economy and to create opportunities, you need something that's called the triple helix, which is a horrible phrase, but in the public sector we like these horrible phrases. What it effectively means is if you want a place to be really leading the innovation world of any industry, you need the public sector, you need the private sector, and you need higher education, all investing and all working together to deliver the innovation solutions for the region. And that's something that we already have in York. We have the Institute of Safe Autonomy here at the university doing world-leading research around some of the systems and the process and the technology required within the rail sector. We have Network Rail. So Network Rail operate in what's called control periods, which I think is 5 years, and they have between 40 and 50 billion they spend in that 5-year period. And in the current control period, they've identified research and innovation as one of their key drivers. So we have the public sector asset owner who has identified innovation as a key driver. And we already have the industry in both large and small situated in York. So if you look at the 20 organisations who received most money from Network Rail around innovation over the last control period, 12 of them have already got a base in York. And these are private sector. So what we have is we have the asset, we have the problem, because whilst the north-south connectivity is pretty good, east-west it's pretty rubbish. And actually, if you look at the rail infrastructure, particularly in the north, what you find is that the East Coast Main Line is okay, but the infrastructure on all the other rails is out of date and it is unreliable. And the only way to sort that out, the only way to address that and therefore improve the reliability of our trains and improve the frequency and get people off our roads so they're using our trains is to innovate. You can't address the infrastructure of the UK simply by running a little bit faster and working a little bit harder. You have to innovate to solve these problems and some of the infrastructure challenges. So we have the small businesses, we have the large businesses, and we have the university already innovating in York to deliver this. So the real question is that we have the problem, we have the owners of the problem, we have the industry and we have the academia already working on this. So why isn't it already flourishing and why is it not? So as a combined authority, one of the first things the government asked the Mayor to do was identify where we had a competitive advantage. What are the areas of the industry where it made economic sense to invest in York because we had a real advantage over the rest of the UK? And rail innovation was one of the ones where you very quickly identified that. So we've now agreed with national government that is an area where we want to focus and we want to innovate. And I don't think any of the other combined authorities in the country have identified that. So we've now made the case nationally that we want to work with the UK government, we want to work with Network Rail, and we want to work with local partners because we have that genuine competitive advantage. So because we've now got the Mayor, we've now got the strategic driver for why rail innovation should drive forwards. As I've already said, we've got the assets, we've got the public sector, we've got the private sector. But what's been lacking is the cohesion, the glue to bring it all together. So in effect, we've had lots of good things happening, but lots of good things happening in a kind of dispersed, sporadic nature, and we haven't been able to make sure that the whole is greater than the sum of the individual parts. So what we're trying to do as a combined authority now is bring that sector together so that we can get Network Rail, and rather than having lots of individual conversations with Network Rail, we can have a strategic conversation around how York and North Yorkshire and all the businesses within it can help and work with Network Rail to solve some of their problems that they've got. And we want the same conversations with LNER and obviously the other rail providers around that. So we're working really hard now. We're committed to rail innovation in York and North Yorkshire. We think there's a real opportunity. The great thing for us is that it's not just the economic opportunity that comes out of it. It actually solves one of the infrastructure problems we've got in the patch. So for the Mayor, who's got responsibility for transport, it creates jobs, it creates opportunities, but actually also creates a more reliable infrastructure for which he's responsible, and he's key for driving the strategic leadership around from that perspective. So we think we've got a really unique opportunity in York and North Yorkshire that other areas don't have. We've got the connectivity. It makes sense to put the industry in the region. We have the assets. We have Network Rail with their biggest base based in the region. We have the industry which are innovating, and we have the university who are already innovating in that sector. And we now have York Central, which ironically was obviously former railway land, which is now coming to the fore, so we can actually drive the innovation based on ex-railway land right bang in the middle of York. So you can come into York, you can innovate on the rail sector. You can be on the train and you can be in London, you can be in Edinburgh, you can be in any of the big cities in the country in less than 2.5 hours. So it makes sense to do it. So really, why rail? Why a 21st century rail hub in York? Firstly, it makes economic and commercial sense to do that. Secondly, it will drive opportunity, it will drive growth, and it will drive prosperity across the region. Thirdly, it will solve some of the infrastructure problems that we have in York and North Yorkshire. And fourthly, it will make sure that York and North Yorkshire has a very clear place on the national map around where it is at the forefront of industry and it is driving opportunity. So I think we stand here in a really, really strong position. We've got the assets, we've got the innovation, we've got the opportunity. What we just need to do now is work better with government, work better with Network Rail, so that there is more innovation, so that there is more investment, and frankly, so that our trains run on time, the more frequently, and there are less breakdowns and less missed opportunities. And if we can do that, that York will continue to be the fantastic city that it is now, long into the future. So that's why, as the Mayor and the Combined Authority, rail innovation is absolutely front and centre in our economic plans, and it will remain absolutely front and centre in our conversations as we push for investment in York and North Yorkshire. Thank you.
Over to you, Allan.
Hello, everyone, again. It's always difficult to go second anyway, but to go behind James is, I don't know anything. One of my points on my list gone now, James. I'm going to start again. Everything James has said there, I'm not from York. I'm from one or two stops up the line from York, depending on which train you're on. I'm from Durham. There's a lot of similarities between Durham and York, not on the rail sector, but just in terms of how you approach development in historic cities. But so having kind of come to York to try and get an understanding of it before we started the project, it became clear to me very early on just how important the rail industry has been to York in the last couple of 100 years. And our job here, as part of the triple helix that James was describing earlier, our job is to actually deliver the physical buildings at York Central. So for those that don't know the history of the development, the land, as James described there, is a kind of teardrop-shaped piece of land that's bounded by the rail on all sides, hence why there's 115 acres of undeveloped land right in the heart of the city. This just never happens, usually, and it's only because of the rail industry that opportunity has come to market lately. The difficulty with that site, it's taken many, many years to come forward. One of the guys who sits on our kind of development board, same age as me, he's coming up to 62. He started his life working for the York City Council, as it was, I believe, writing the business case for bringing forward York Central when he started his first job at age 22. So for 40 years, this is being talked about. So it's an amazing opportunity, but it's been highly constrained by the rail industry around it. However, the rail industry in the form of Network Rail and Homes England as the other government agency have come together to basically bring all of the land around that area into a single ownership to allow it to be brought forward as a mixed-use development. So there's lots of challenges, as ever, in historic cities around archaeology, all of those things, most of which now have been dealt with. The next big challenge in order to bring York Central forward is delivering the infrastructure package. And when we were chatting over lunch earlier on, Sarah was saying to me, it's probably one of the best kept secrets in York, even for the York residents, because it's a very, very difficult site to actually see. You can see it when you walk across when you come across the Water End Bridge, and you can see if you walk across the Wilton Rise footbridge. But the scale of it, I think most people don't yet understand. And although the infrastructure works, which incidentally are not being delivered by us, we're waiting for them the same as everybody in York is, although the infrastructure works have been delayed, they're expected to be completed by the end of June. And I think when the first part of the infrastructure works are finished and everyone can drive into York, rather than through the Lehman Road entrance under the bridge, through the new highway, everyone will get an amazing view of what is to come over the next 10 or 15 years, which is quite exciting. So from a development point of view, our job is to drive maximum value from that site, not just from a commercial point of view for the landowners who have said a Network Rail and Homes England, but maximum value for the people of York and of Yorkshire. And we've been working in this triple helix, for want of a better word, James, with the Combined Authority and the university to make sure that we drive maximum social value out of that site. And it became obvious early on in those initial discussions that rail was going to play a really important part of that. But innovation isn't just alive and well in York in the rail industry. There's two other sectors that we think will benefit greatly from York Central, and that is the bioeconomy. And again, we're working closely with the university to see how we can work with that sector and try and create a cluster for that. And another thing that I learned very early on from the kind of creative arts sector is that York is the only city in the UK that's got this UNESCO designation as a creative city. So I think York's a great place anyway. I think York will move from strength to strength. And our hope is that by working with all of the stakeholders, that we can quickly bring forward York Central, having had this 40-year gestation period. We want to move it forward into reality now very quickly. So I know I've only got a couple of minutes to speak, so just so that anyone in the room that isn't aware of what York Central is, it's 115 acres of land right next to the mainline railway station. It's already got outline planning consent for 2,500 homes and about 1 million square feet of commercial space. We think we can improve upon that by being a bit cleverer with design and so on. So we're going to be pushing harder. We're trying to deliver about 3,000 homes at York Central. We're targeting 40% affordable as well on there, because we realise there's a lack of affordable housing in the city centre. And if we're going to grow these new industries, we've got to provide the facilities and the housing to retain the people that are going to work in these innovation businesses as well. So we shouldn't underestimate how important the right housing offer is. And this 1 million square feet of commercial space that we've currently got consent for, we think by being a bit smarter in design, we may be able to push that a little bit harder and maybe get 1.3, 1.4 million square feet of space without breaking any of the height parameters, etc. So that's our challenge. But I think that, the one message I wanted to get across was York Central has been a long time coming. It's going to hit the street. It's going to hit the ground running pretty hard in the next 12 months. And we are very keen to work with both James and his colleagues at the Mayoral Authority and the university to drive as much commercial value as we possibly can for the City of York from the rail industry in particular. So more than happy to take any questions later if there's anyone, or afterwards even, if there's anyone who wants to speak about York Central as opposed to just rail. Okay. Thank you.
Over to you, David.
Hi, everybody. I just want to talk about three things. So firstly, for those who don't know anything about LNER, or perhaps not as much as you like, I'll just give a few stats on why York is so important for us as a hub. Secondly, I'm going to ask a question. Actually, what is a station for? Hopefully that's not a stupid question. We'll see. You can give me your view on that. And then finally, what's coming next? What are the innovations that are coming from our side when it comes to York Station, when it comes to the East Coast Main Line, and how the future of York as a hub will continue. So just to give you some of those headline stats on LNER. So we are the main rail operator on the East Coast Main Line. So we transport 24 million customers every year. For York Station itself, 3 million passengers either start or end their journey at the station. So that just gives you an idea of how important York is for us, for the whole East Coast network. Of course, LNER has its head office in York. We talked earlier about York being a rail city. Very much from our perspective, it's a part of our history, it's a part of our future as well. So we have 1,300 LNER employees who live either in Yorkshire or Humber region. So that's more than a third of our workforce actually come from the region. And the Rail Operating Centre, the ROC, which is run by Network Rail, is essentially the guiding mind, I guess, of the day-to-day operation of the rail network, and that's based in York as well. And we have LNER staff in the ROC and make decisions every day about how we keep people moving, how we keep the trains going where they need to be. So on to my stupid question, which is what are stations for? So I wanted to talk about sort of three things. So if we think about rail as a hub, what do we mean? What do we mean by that? So the first one is probably quite obvious, which is a railway station as a transport hub. So it allows you to get on and off a train, but also it combines other transport modes as well. So within a station environment, it works because you can combine other transport modes as well. So people can get to a station because you integrate the bus network. You provide parking, you provide facilities for cyclists, you make sure that it's accessible for pedestrians. So stations are transport hubs that bring together different transport modes. In a previous role, I used to work for Gatwick Airport, and for anyone who knows the airport, they have a train station connected to it, and 40% of their passengers use rail. So that just gives you an idea of the importance of rail as a transport hub for other transport modes as well. So when we talk about York, when we talk about the development in York, integrating all those different transport modes is really crucial and really is at the heart of the Gateway project. The second thing I want to talk about in relation to hubs is stations as economic anchors. So again, we've touched on it. It's the beauty of going last. I can sort of nod to the other speakers and sort of reference what they've mentioned. But stations are also economic anchors. So in the York context, it provides a hub. It provides retail and provides economic activity in that sense. It brings people into a place, but also it stimulates a city or a town. So when you invest in a train station, you invest not just in that mode of transport, you invest in the whole city, the whole region. And the economic benefits of that are huge. And we see in York the huge amount of investment that's happening, and it was touched on earlier about the housing and the business development as well. We manage 11 stations across our network. Darlington is another station where there's a huge amount of investment happening. So there's a £140 million project, 2 new platforms, a new car park. Again, when we think about hubs, we're thinking about economic investment and all that money helping to deliver regeneration projects as well. And the third type of hub I want to talk about is the idea of train stations as community hubs. So if you go through York Station on an average day, you'll see that there are community groups quite often at the station. So it might be charities raising money. It might be the Scouts. It might be other community groups that see the train station as a hub. So when we talk about a hub, I think it's quite important to think in those terms. So yes, transport, but also economy and also community as well. So when we think about York Station, I think it certainly shows shows those three elements within it. And as the Gateway project gets underway, we'll start to see those come to the fore as well. The economic benefits, the community benefits, and also the benefits of bringing people into rail and allowing them to take their onward journeys as well. So just to touch on a few things of what next. For anyone who travels from York regularly, you may have seen we have a new family lounge. So at the end of last year, we developed a space for families to take their young children, allow them to burn off a bit of energy before getting on the train. Anyone with young children knows the importance of that. And this shows partly the sort of changing needs of passengers. So one thing that we're keen to do at LNER is to make sure we continue to deliver what passengers want, what passengers need. Now, in the station context, most of the infrastructure, most stations date from the Victorian period. So actually delivering those changes, delivering those investments are sometimes hard to do. And for the family lounge itself, the Railway Heritage Trust also invested some money with us to preserve the facilities as well. So when we do anything like that, we need to think about, yes, the heritage, but also how we're meeting the needs of our passengers and also their future needs as well. For anyone who starts at LNER, their journey with the organisation starts at York. So we have a structured induction programme. So anyone who starts in the business, wherever you're based, you will start your induction at York. So for those 3 days, you'll be based in York. You will also have additional training. If you're a train driver, you'll spend a lot of time in York as you're trained to deliver and to fulfil that role. So York, from our point of view, is essential to how the business grows, whether you're based in Newcastle or Edinburgh or down in King's Cross. York is a fundamental part of our organisation. So when we think about, again, York as a hub, it's certainly a hub for us as a business as well. And then lastly, just to touch on another change. So it was alluded to in the first session, but we have a timetable change coming in December. We are terming this East Coast Velocity, so it's a huge change to our timetable. We'll see an extra 16,000 seats a day provided by this change, a huge increase in the number of train services as well. From an economic point of view, we'll see 300 new jobs, and a third of those in Yorkshire and the North East. So I guess I will end there, but what I wanted to do was talk about, obviously, York as a hub, but think about the entirety of that term. So yes, we're connecting people, but we're also connecting the regional economy. We're also connecting the community as well. But very happy to take questions. Thank you very much.
So I'm going to ask a few questions, and I think actually they're all aimed at all of you. So you're going to get a chance to answer. So I guess I'd like to go back a little bit to some of the history we had this morning, and we heard a lot about the history of York and the fact that it's a rail city, and you've all referred to that being a rail city. So if we think ahead a little bit, not for 40 years, Alan, but to when some of this has happened, for the citizen of York, how will we know that we are in a rail city for the future? What is it about all of your visions for York Central, for rail innovation, for LNER's perspective? How are we going to get that excitement that it's part of our fabric, it's part of our lives. So I don't know who you look, Alan. You look like you want to kick off.
Sorry.
So you don't want to wait the 40 years. So yeah, you're going to get in first.
I have not got time to wait another 40 years.
No,
so
none of us have.
I can assure you of that, and as was Ian and our team. But for me, as I said, when I came to York for the first time, it just hit me straight away how much of a rail city this is, and one of the great things for York Central, and the reason I think York Central being an amazing success, is because it's right next to, one of the speakers mentioned, the best connected railway station in the north of England, and it genuinely is. So, certainly for York Central and the city of York, the railway station is fundamental to it, I think, and I think it sits kind of juxtaposed between the old city of York on the one side, which has got the city walls and so on, and on the other side of the station will be, kind of a new part of the city. I mean, I think it's something like 60% of the land size of the walled city, York Central. So it's a huge thing. It's going to create a total change. But I think rail, so as well as the actual active rail, and as well as the route operating centre that's already there, and the ability for us to provide the space for the rail industry to cluster around the city, which I think is really important. And it hasn't been able to do that in the past. They've taken space, it's scattered around York and Yorkshire. We'll have the ability now to provide new fit-for-purpose space for the rail industry to come together, which is one thing. I think the other thing that'll kind of reinforce York as the railway, as a kind of the railway city in the country, is that the York Central project is facilitating the expansion of the Railway Museum, and joining those two buildings together with that new central hall, which will be served from the existing railway station through a new station entrance and across a new public square, will be amazing. So I think any visitor to York that comes into that railway station, it's obvious it's a railway city. Yeah,
something for us all to feel really proud of. Right, James or David? David, you've got your mouth open.
I think that's a really crucial point. Bringing organisations together in the rail sector physically, I think, is really important to what we know to be the trajectory of the rail industry. So what we'll see in the next few years is the creation of Great British Railways, so that's bringing track and train together. So at the moment we have a patchwork of franchises, so train operating companies, and the infrastructure operator as Network Rail. We have a number of operators that are already part of government, including LNER. So we're now one of five, and we'll see more of those franchises coming to government in the next couple of years. And what we'll see is the creation of Great British Railways, which is bringing track and train together. Now, you mentioned about what's the benefit to passengers. What are people going to see that's different? And we hope that this change will mean we can work more closely together to deliver for the passenger. So concrete examples of that would be around engineering works. So making sure that they are planned and thought about with a view to create the least disruption as possible. So we will put in additional services for sort of football matches or such cultural activities, and making sure that from an infrastructure perspective that rail works aren't planned at the same time. So simple things like that, being able to identify problems and fix them sooner. So that physical location of organisations together, I think, will help with that broader drive for us all to be one organisation with one culture and one aim, which is to deliver better service for passengers.
So fewer engineering works we're aware of. You heard it here first. James, beat that.
Yeah, no. So I think there's three things you need to look at. So visibly, York Station will be a modern dynamic station. There's a station gateway, obviously, development going on at the moment. There'll be a new entrance at the back, which is out onto York Central. So, very visibly...
The back, James.
The front, a bit of front, you're right. Absolutely right to correct me. So very visibly, when you use York Station, it will feel like a different place. But I think more importantly, when you talk to York Central, you only get one chance to be genuinely world-class. If you're doing economic regeneration, you can only build it once. You can't knock it down and start again once it's been done. And so it is now or never when it wants to be world-class. And, we've spent a lot of time, and Alan even more, talking about what are the constituent parts so that when you come out of the new entrance to the station into York Central, that will make it feel really dynamic and a world-class and an amazing place. And the Railway Museum extension is a key fundamental part of that. The new entrance to the station is a key fundamental part of that. And the Innovation Centre, which is going to be enabling local industry to work closer with Network Rail and to genuinely innovate in that, is a key part of that. So in what will be the central business district for the City of York, actually the rail aspects, and both linked to the heritage of the rail, but also the future of the rail, are fundamental parts to the vision of world-class for what that looks like. And I think that is really, really important. But I think there's one other point, and this is really, really important, is that it's about the next generation. It's about our young people coming through. And a real measure of success for me is that every school, every college, every university, when they're working with their students and talking about what are the good careers to go into and where are the opportunities in the City of York, the rail industry, whether it's with a train operator, whether it's Network Rail, whether it's some of the supply chain and the engineering, it is a career of choice in the City of York where you can go in, there's a really dynamic career, you can get good quality jobs, and it's a career which will last you for a lifetime. And, that's what York was historically in its rail heritage. That's what it needs to be in the future. We need to be talking about the rail industry in York as a dynamic, fantastic career for our young people coming through our schools and our colleges and our universities. And in many ways, that is the ultimate measure of success. If the rail industry is seen as the career of choice for young people in York, then that means it's really, really important.
So I was going to come back to skills, but I'm going to ask the question now because you've absolutely got us down that track. So because I want to ask the question of all of you, because one way or another you've all touched on it, and you've really just set us up about that it will, hopefully there will be, careers for people in the city and also presumably people coming into the city for those careers. But what are they? So what are those skills that our young people, or maybe some of us who are older who want to regenerate our careers, what are they in? What are the skills that we're going to need for the future? So I don't know if you want to keep going, James, or hear what the other two have to say.
Well, probably, the early area is the career. I mean, I can talk from my perspective, and we do a lot of work, and there's a lot of generic terms thrown around digital or engineering and such like. But actually, you've got to understand where your niche is in those industries and what the opportunity is. So I think it's really important that we don't try and pigeonhole rail jobs into a little niche. Actually, if you look at the future of the rail industry, you look at what you need to innovate as a train operator, you look at what Network Rail need to do to innovate, to make the infrastructure more reliable. Actually, they cut across a broad range of different sectors. So, we're talking about the future of AI, and absolutely that's linked into it. And, you've got the Institute of Safe Autonomy and all the work that you're doing here, which is incredible. Yeah, so you've got digital jobs, you've got AI jobs, you've got engineering jobs. These all underpin an effective sector such as rail, which has got hard infrastructure, it's got the operating, and it's got all the kind of technology wrapped around it. So the careers in rail will be broad. And I think what's really important is that we provide pathways into those careers where people can see a way in, and once you're in, you can move about. Yeah. So, in many ways, you look at the future of careers, not just in rail, but generically. The future isn't that you go into a single job and you stay there for the rest of your life. Is actually you create a set of skills as an individual which makes you adaptable and able to move around and use those skills. And I think rail is a sector which can really capitalise on that from that point of view. So I'm not really answering your question, because actually the rail industry cuts across a huge range of it. You need to market the trains, you need to do digital, you need to do engineering, you need to do the kind of the hard infrastructure side of things, and these are all really important. But what's really important is that the sector is seen as a dynamic, forward-looking, innovative, a place where people want to work. So actually we shouldn't be promoting rail. Our rail heritage is absolutely wonderful and fantastic, but we've got to be a modern sector. And I think there's an image challenge that we've got to keep working and get over. And I think that's the key to skills. So it's not about specific skills. It's about the sector being seen as the future and the place where you go in and there will be opportunities.
Could I just say that the next session is on rail innovation. So we've had the most fantastic sort of taster for what we're going to be talking about in the next session as well. So stick around for that too.
I totally agree with everything James has said there. And I think, you know, going back to the regional growth strategy stuff that you and your team have been working on recently, rail's right up there as a priority, and hence why we've been working together very closely on it. And it spans a huge range of different skills, as does development and construction. You know, so people come to us and say, well, what are you doing about opportunities in, you know, people are thinking about bricklayers and plumbers and this kind of thing. Yes, we need all of those, but there's also architects and designers and engineers, and, you know, it's a huge breadth of opportunities. So I think that, you know, we shouldn't pigeonhole it too much. The scale of the development that's going to happen there will offer massive opportunities of any event. But once we have finished our work, whether that's 10 years, 12 years from now, and the development piece is done, it's the opportunities into the future will come from the employers that are based there.
Absolutely.
So, you know, it won't be all about rail. We see rail as a big piece of it, but for us it's about attracting good quality and long-term sustainable industries into that place. Yeah. And rail is the number one at the moment for me.
David?
I violently agree with both of my panellists. Something that James mentioned just about the breadth of roles within rail now and in the future. I think that's a key message we need to get across. I think every organisation within rail, so whether you're a train operating company, you work for Nowhere Rail, you work in one of the other related organisations that are in the railway family, we all have a responsibility to engage with young people, to engage with schools, to engage with colleges, to engage with universities as well. And to explain the breadth of roles that we have available. Because for a lot of young people, you mentioned the railway, they'll instantly think about driving trains, which, yes, is one career route, but there are so many. James mentioned digital. There's a huge space here for how we can use technology to address some of the issues that we face as an industry, and how we make it more reliable, how we address some of those problems before they really cause deeper problems for the industry. So I think from our perspective, from LNER's perspective, we are one of many organisations that engages with schools, and I think we all need to do that, to start to make the point that actually there are so many different careers. And going back to something I said earlier about the creation of Great British Railways, this will create a massive organisation that includes engineers looking at the infrastructure to chefs on board trains as well. So the breadth of roles that we talk about is only going to get larger, and I think we as an industry need to make sure we get that message out there and engage with young people in the right way.
What about young people? You've got your discovery session tomorrow, is that right?
Yeah.
And just one more thing to add to that as well is listening to, we often sit on these panels and say people are kind of what opportunities are being offered. It's very much a two-way thing, this, isn't it? Because these industries can only thrive if we've got talent coming back the other way. Yeah. So for me, you know, it's a great opportunity for people to come to York because of the talent.
Absolutely. You bring people in as well.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Yeah. So one of the things that we heard this morning was about the impact of the railway, in that case in York. This is slightly different because it's rail, but it's also the development. And, you know, and if we, you know, to close our eyes and say, you know, what image comes to mind when you think of York? Lots of people have different images. So for some of us, it's the history. From what we heard this morning, it's probably chocolate. There are different things that come to mind when you think of York, and rail is I'm sure, well, certainly in this audience, I'm sure it's one of them. But if you were to, again, look ahead, and I guess I'm going to come to you first, Alan, and think, York Central's there. We've all retired, and, it's there. If you were to, land yourself in the middle of that development and not be told which city you're in, what about that development will tell you you're in York? And you'll know that when you open your eyes.
It's an easy one, because if you open your eyes and you look across the square, you can see a minster.
Well, that's a good...
and it's been designed in that way.
Oh, that's an interesting point.
But you've got to take, you've got to leverage the cues of the historic city, which is what the architects have done at the Masterplan stage, which is why all the key views are so important, etc. So
So key views is one of them.
Key views is one. But I also think that what we've been kind of instilling into the design teams is that this is a huge site, yes, and we're bringing it forward in phases. But what we wanted to do from day one is to work towards a position where when we finish phase one, which at the moment we're targeting kind of early 28, so this is not start on site, this is finish of phase one. Phase one needs to feel like York Central now exists, and what's going to come afterwards will be filling in, we'll be fixing the look and feel of York Central from the get-go. Hence why it's important for us to create the high-quality public realm and put the new station building in from day one. I mean, normally when you're doing a development like this, you don't approach it in that way. You kind of go in and you're kind of minimising your expense on enabling works in order to make it financially viable to deliver your first piece, and then when you're recycling the capital back, that's not what's happening here, and that's because we're working with the government and the landowners in order to deliver deliver a new place from day one. So how we're seeing this is that it will, because of its scale, we will be delivering it in kind of pockets of, they'll be like little neighbourhoods in their own right. So when you walk around York, one of the things I noticed when we first came and we were discussing it with the architectural teams, we walked right around the city walls, and it's amazing how different every single piece of York is. So what we've said is, this doesn't want to be a pastiche of an old, but it's got to kind of, it's got to look like it's grown over time, if you like, but be very contemporary. So let's hope that when you're back there in 2028 having a look at it, that's been successful. But that, that Yorkness, that kind of, the way that York's kind of grown over 2,000 years or whatever, we're trying to create that. It's not going to be one architectural style. So, for example, we haven't gone out to one architectural firm to deliver anything either. We've run architectural competitions for each sector. And at the moment, we've got 7 different architects working on different elements of it, but they've all got to work within the overall design code. It's not going to be a hodgepodge of different things. I guess we'll be judged in 2028 as to whether that's been a success for the people who sat there.
We've got the head of our School of Architecture in the audience.
Right.
So I spotted. So yes, so she may or may not have a question.
She'll be kind to me because I know her.
We'll see. Fantastic answer. James, any comments from you?
Well, I think Alan's summed it up perfect, hasn't it? You'll stand with your back to York Central, and you'll have the Railway Museum expanded as part of the core entry. You'll have a brand new entrance to a station, and you've got York Minster and all the historic, the history of York directly in front of you. Need you say more?
Yep.
Yeah, can't really add to that. I guess the only thing to say is when you come into York Station, part of what makes it special from my point of view, from an LNER point of view, is the people that we have within the organisation. So I think part of that, knowing that you're in York, is being greeted and talking to staff at the station and being welcomed into a city in the right way.
Interesting. Okay, I'm going to ask one more question and then we'll hand it over to the audience. So be ready. So, yeah, my last question. Again, thinking ahead to when at least phase 1 is in operation, what do you hope you'll be most proud of? What's the single thing you say, yeah, we did it? Or maybe just having done it will be the first
surviving
thing.
to the end of phase 1.
That aside,
is a start.
Yeah.
You know, as I said earlier, I think it's got to feel of York.
Yeah,
you know,
that's
it's
really
got,
important.
It's absolutely got to feel of York, and what we've constantly drilled into the design teams is, you know, everything we are looking at in terms of materiality, space, roofscapes, scale and mass. It's got to look and feel intrinsically York. It's got to feel like it's, you know, we're accelerating it into like a 10 or 12 year period. But at the end of it, it needs to look and feel like it's just grown alongside the existing city. So that for me is what I'm looking for. Yeah. And also, the community, you know, these need to be genuine communities. A lot of the stakeholder engagement that we've been out and where we've met people from these local communities, one of the big issues that kept coming up over and over again, in addition to the lack of affordable housing, was the fact that lots of accommodation in York has now been moved across into Airbnbs, and by doing that it's kind of hollowing out these little communities that were around the city, and that's exactly what we don't want to do. What we try, you know, this is for the people of York. So, you know, successful communities will be a big thing for me.
Yeah. James?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really, really difficult question, a single thing, and I think there's always a risk when you get something on the scale of this, particularly in the current financial climate, that you start watering things down to save money because they are so difficult and so extensive. And the vision that's being created, like I say, is genuinely world class, and holding on to that vision. And I think if we can do that and make sure that we do retain that ambition to be the place that people come to visit to see how it's done. And in many ways, I think, you know, you talk about something which will be the indicator of that is, are the people of York proud of what we've created? And in many ways, you know, we are about people. For all this physical infrastructure and everything else, and we do everything, it's about the people, it's about the communities who live here. And actually what I want is, you know, I'd love to be in a place when this is completed where actually the stakeholders in York, the people who live here, the businesses, actually speak with pride and actually are the biggest advocates. We talked earlier about when people come to York, and actually the one thing we didn't mention is what you want is whether you get in a taxi, whether you go into a shop, whether you're in a hotel, you want the people within it to be speaking of the city with pride and actually selling the assets and attributes of that city. Yeah. And if we do that, and actually people are directed to go and look at York Central because it is so genuinely world class, like people do in King's Cross now, you know, we often talk about it. In a way, if people feel like that about it, we've done a really good job.
Yeah. And you can't, you're the people again.
Yeah. Well,
James has done that.
Well, on the sort of wider sort of people point, it's being able to keep people moving and to, you know, the challenge of doing anything either in a train station or around a train station is the disruption that causes. So success for us is to continually keep people moving, keep trains arriving, keep people moving outside of the station as well. So success for us is that continual challenge of you've got a major work going on, but actually can you keep things moving? Can you keep delivering for passengers on the train, but also the other sort of transport modes that they'll get as well? So success for us is the challenge of keeping people moving and keeping the hub, the transport hub, active during massive works that go on around it.
Fantastic. Right. Okay. We have about half an hour, and we have 2 microphones that are roving. So there's a person, there, yes, that you with your finger, yes, that the one that's waving. Let's go to you first because the microphone's there first.
Thank you. I've got 2 questions. You talk about 1 million to 1.3 million square metres, I think, of commercial space. you've talked about the creative industries, which now represent about 5 or 6% of the economy, but they don't take up a lot of space. And at the moment, I can think of 2 recording studios out on the North York Moors. Why should they move in there? And also the bioeconomy. What other economic activities do you envisage coming into that commercial space? That's my first question. My second question is, we have experience of using the line into Gatwick Airport, which was specifically mentioned earlier. It is not an LNER problem, but we had thought when we moved back up to North Yorkshire that there would be a good train service through to Manchester Airport. I won't say what I think of it, but it's pretty abysmal. So is anything in the pipeline to do with that?
Okay, I think James, perhaps first of all on the economic, or Alan, either of you. You're both going to get.
Alan's got the site responsibility, so.
Right. Well, you're both going to get an answer.
So just addressing the point, I'm guessing that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm guessing the point is, do we need 1.3 million square feet of commercial space in the city centre of York? Am I right in thinking that?
Who's going to use it? Who's really going to use it?
Is that the question? Yeah. So you know, the sectors that I mentioned, the 3 sectors that I mentioned earlier, were just what we'd identified as being kind of the low-hanging fruit in terms of who we can attract into the early phase 1. And the other reason we were looking at those 3 sectors was because we feel that those three sectors offer the biggest opportunity from an innovation point of view. So when we've been looking at delivering space at York Central, it's not purely about this one building, this one innovation space. That's just something to kickstart what will be York's central business district. And having worked in commercial property now for 20 years in the north of England, when footloose requirements come out to the agents, York is not even on the radar. Neither is Durham. So when the work I did 15 years ago in Durham was to put Durham on the map in terms of a place that people could look for good quality, brand new, Grade A office space. So if the other piece of research that we did in York, and please don't quote me on the number because I'm not the best on exact numbers, but recalling the report that I read, there was something like 750,000 square feet of office accommodation in the city of York has been lost over the last 10 years because it's been converted to student accommodation or it's been converted to residential. So York's got quite a low availability for office space anyway. And when we came to York to try and find an office for ourselves to work out of for the first 2 or 3 years until we got phase 1 done, we really struggled to do that. We were helped out by the university who gave us some of their space in the Guildhall. So there is a lack of office space already in York. So that makes me confident that demand can follow. But I think going back to what we were saying earlier about why do people locate to a place, I think York has a lot to offer anyone in terms of the cultural offer, and it's a beautiful place to live and it's relatively cheap to live compared to the southeast, but there just isn't the availability at the moment of that kind of space. So we're not wedded to the 1 million square feet or 1.5 million square feet. The planning that we have on that site allows us to flex that between different uses. So what will happen is we're kicking off phase 1 with a couple of 100,000 square feet for the Government Property Agency. So that's one occupier immediately in phase 1. We're planning, working with James and his colleagues, we're planning to bring forward another building of about 100,000 square feet, which will house an innovation hub. But going back to what we were saying earlier about the fact that there's really already a rail cluster in York. It's just not actually clustered together. It's clustered around York and Yorkshire, but it's not in one specific place. And because that route operating centre is on York Central, right next to the line and right next to the station. That's the obvious place for a rail cluster to be. So I'm quite confident that there will be occupiers for this space. But if the market moves, or, you know, and there's less requirement for office space than we've originally thought, then it'll be changed to a different kind of use, such as residential.
Yeah. So James, and then I might have a comment on this. Be very cheeky as a chair. I might have some comments on this before we answer the Manchester Airport question, or perhaps have a comment on it. But go on, James.
So if you think about why a business locates anywhere when they're investing, and you know, to overly simplify it, it's for three reasons. It's one, because there's access to a skilled workforce. Well, York's great at that. It's got some, you know, with two universities, whatever, it's got really skilled people. It's actually got the quality of life so that people want to live there. Again, York ticks that box in a big way. And the third one is that you've got either access to customers or supply chain for your industry. And you know, we can flesh those out, but broadly speaking, that's what goes through for the decision making for where someone needs to be. And the way we're trying to do it here, so we've identified the key sectors, and the sectors we've identified aren't just the one where they're big at the moment. We've researched the ones where there is the potential to grow. So again, you look at the challenge of the rail infrastructure in this country. It needs to innovate to solve its problems. It's the only way it can solve its problems, and therefore we need industry to be innovating to do that. So we know we've got the thing. So what you then try and do is you try and get what you call the anchor institutions to be based there, and the anchor institutions are those businesses that are really important in a sector that people will locate there because they want to be near to them. So Network Rail LNER and Network Rail actually. So in the rail industry, we already have two of those anchor institutions in the city, and therefore people want to be here because they want to be near to them. So when we're looking at the other sectors and we're looking at the innovation centre that Allan talked about, we'll be looking to try and make sure that these businesses that are really important in that sector, people will locate to be near, will have a base there. It doesn't mean the head office is there, but they'll have a base there so that people will locate around them to have access to those businesses. And really that's what you're trying to do. There will then always be, like I say, there is a shortage of grade A office space, and there is any number of growing businesses in York who are having to leave York or look outside York because they can't grow within the city. So there is untapped potential, but with regard to the new sectors, we've got the great place, we've got the great workforce. We just need to make sure we have those anchor institutions so that people want to locate to be near them.
So I think you used two really key words there, and it's the innovation and clustering or collaboration, I think was talked about earlier, because there's a reason for people to want to be together. And going back to the creative industries, in fact, because of the innovation in an industry like the creative industries and like in rail, actually having access to the latest and the newest facilities, such as the university has at Guildhall, for example, in the creative industries, is an opportunity, particularly for those new companies, to learn about the new technology, which will enable them to grow, and then they need their own space. So it's about the future, not necessarily about people relocating just for the sake of it. So I think that word innovation is the key one. Any comment on the economic aspect, or are we going to really pick on you for the why haven't we got a decent rail hub?
Unfortunately, I have to disappoint you on that, in that it's not part of LNER's
We know
network,
it's not LNER.
But I'll touch on two things. Yeah. So one is the timetable change. So I mentioned earlier about the timetable change coming in December. Now, this isn't just for LNER, it's also for other operators across the East Coast Main Line. So other operators are obviously more appropriate for this question, so Northern Trans-Pennine Express as well. So there are changes to come, and what we've done as an industry is work very closely together, looking at where is the demand coming, where is the future demand coming. So although I can't specifically answer that question, hopefully that gives you a sense of the fact that industry is talking about developing the timetable and thinking about where those flows are coming in the future. The second point I'd make, because I mentioned Gatwick Airport, so you're right, having connection to transport hubs is really crucial. So I know, pretty sure that those running Manchester Airport will be lobbying government for good rail connections because, as I mentioned with the Gatwick point, having that connection for an airport is really crucial to get people out of cars. There are still many people who drive to an airport for lots of reasons, and if you can get them get them out of their car and onto train, that's a huge benefit for everyone. So, apologies, I can't answer your specific point, but just to look at the sort of wider development that's happening in the industry, we'll see changes in this space. But it is certainly connectivity to airports is certainly high on the agenda.
Gentleman there with the with the glasses, and yes, you got your hand up first.
Just comment on that last thing. Surely the Transpennine upgrade is the key thing, but we'll have to wait a bit. Sessions yesterday on Rowntree's legacy in the Festival of Ideas, we were looking at economic growth as a precursor for alleviating poverty and other things. Now, poverty is not just a financial thing. There are other aspects to it. And we were also considering general well-being. Now, I was slightly concerned when Allan started talking about increasing the number of dwellings and the size of the commercial space on the site. It sounds like a fairly typical developer's trick of, we'll get the outline planning permission for a certain amount, and then we'll actually try and squeeze in some more and hope they don't stop us. Can we be assured that we're really going to have a world-quality environment on this space?
Absolutely. Can I answer that straight away?
Yeah. I thought you were going to stop at absolutely.
No, absolutely. Yes, I've heard that many times before on lots of other developments that we've done. Rest assured that the outline consent that is in existence now is something that all the parameter plans that exist in that outline consent, the team are working to. What we do, there's no alchemy in this. What we're looking at doing is basically taking the design that was done originally, which it doesn't date all the way back to when Ian Thompson was working at the council in 1970, whatever. It goes back to about 2016, I think, when they were doing all the initial designs. And part of the outline consent is to provide for 2 multi-storey car parks for 2,000 cars. So one of the first things we looked at when we looked at, bearing in mind we're inheriting somebody else's design here, what we did was looked at that outline consent and thought, really? You know, this site is sitting right next to the north best connected railway station. Does every one of these residential units need to have a car parking space, for example? We didn't think so. We also don't think that it's a great idea to be encouraging cars into York Central to park up to then go into the city centre through the railway station and so on. So although we haven't yet formally altered the planning consent that is in existence because we don't want to jeopardise delivery of phase number 1, we've been talking to the local planning authority since day one about those changes. So this is more about making York Central car light and utilising the space that was previously occupied by the 2 multi-storey car parks than altering any of the parameter plans. So hopefully that gives a little bit of reassurance. But if you want any more drilled down detail, more than happy to have a chat about that.
Could I before we have go on to another question, could I maybe just expand out a little bit, because you used the word well-being, and so I know there's a lot of other considerations about the site in terms of its biodiversity, its the environmental aspects of the well-being of the people who will be living and working there. Yeah. Might this be a moment to say a little bit about that as well? Possibly.
I mean, one of the things that has sprung to mind in the public engagement sessions that we've done up to date, we've had this question a few times, sure. And people's expectations are that what we're doing is we are eating into the public realm, for example, because there's a linear path that runs all the way through this. None of that is being touched. So this is purely how we are using the space that's already got consent. And the planning consent that we are working to isn't a planning consent that we we have designed and are then looking to change. This is a planning consent that we've inherited from the landowners who are Network Rail and Homes England, and what we're trying to do is to improve that consent. And in doing so, we think we can drive more of housing and more commercial space. And we've had really positive feedback in the public engagement sessions on, particularly on the housing element, because what we're doing with the additional space that we're trying to drive out of the Masterplan is we're using that to deliver affordable housing. So although we are bound to deliver 20% affordable housing, which is policy compliant, we're actually targeting 40%.
Just with regards to York Central, I was going to ask, obviously with this amount of homes and this amount of people coming into the area, what's the impact on schooling, on the hospital, on your GP surgeries? Are you going to be having GP surgeries in that area? I'm just thinking about, we live quite locally in Acomb. The roads going through the town are already quite busy, especially in rush hour. Even though you don't want every one of those residents to have a car, there will be more vehicles coming into the city. So what about the rest of the infrastructure? Are you working with York City Council to think about the impact on those homes that are going to be occupied by families, where the schools already might be oversubscribed? All the other social impacts, rather than just homes and commercial, it's like community schooling, the hospital, the public transport in the area, the roads. Even the road that you talked about over Water End, it's in a terrible state, and I cycle along there and I keep thinking, are they going to improve these road systems in the future when more cars are going to be coming down to this area, to Lehman Road area? Are we going to have sort of like a better infrastructure around York Central to help support York Central when it's emerging?
Okay, one for me.
Yep.
Just talking about the Water End Bridge, for example, that's part of the enabling infrastructure works that's ongoing at the moment, so that's not something we're delivering ourselves. That's being delivered currently by Cisco, the contractors, working directly for the landowner, who's Network Rail and Homes England. And the infrastructure package is being delivered in phases. So the first phase, as I mentioned earlier on, is expected to be open to the public before the end of this month. And once that's open, then people get a far better impression of what York Central is all about, because you'll be going into York rather than going along Lehman Road and past the Railway Museum as you do now. You'll be going through York Central and then dropping under the railway bridge. So that's one piece of the infrastructure. The piece you're talking about at Water End, the work that's going on there now is to create a new junction to be able to go directly into York Central rather than going through the estate and through Lehman Road Bridge. That piece of infrastructure will be handed over later. That's the back end of next year. But all of that infrastructure, that infrastructure is designed to take all of the traffic that currently, and more, all of that traffic and more that goes through the current route, through the new route. So that's been designed, and all of the traffic impact assessments and everything have already been done as part of the initial work for the planning consent. On the other elements, which is kind of healthcare and schooling and so on, there's no plans for us to be delivering any new educational space on York Central. If that's the current requirement from the council. They don't think there's any requirement for more school spaces to be actually delivered at York Central. There will be more school spaces elsewhere. York Central will make a Section 106 payment to the council to allow them to improve school facilities around it. So we're not delivering that space. What we are tasked to deliver is new GP surgery space on there. So what we did at the beginning of the process about a year ago was we engaged with the local NHS trust and revisiting what the council have asked us to provide. The NHS trust have basically said that is not of any use to us. It was for us to provide space for 4 GP surgeries. What the NHS trust have asked us to do is to provide more space than that, so that they can. Acumb's a good example. There's a lot. Apparently, I think she said there was something like 13 or 15 different GPs in this area that are all operating, or a lot of them are operating out from old houses that have been converted to GP surgeries and stuff. So the NHS have asked us to kind of pause that delivery in phase 1 to allow them 6 months to assess their need to see if they can actually create a community health hub in York Central. So that will be a far bigger thing to deliver than what we're bound to under the planning. But we think that's probably the right answer, to be honest. So we're not there yet in terms of what the actual health facility will look like. That currently sits with the Healthcare Trust. They're currently now consulting with all of the different GPs, but they're also talking about bringing in services from the hospital as well as dentistry. So this thing's kind of grown arms and legs over the last 6 months, but it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. But it won't be delivered in our phase 1. It'll probably be delivered in phase 2 sometime after 2028.
Thank you. So there's 2 questions there. Doesn't matter which way round, just whichever you get the microphone to.
Quick question about... Oh, crikey, I've forgotten now.
Would you pass the microphone to the man behind you?
How much of a big kick in the teeth was it when GBR headquarters was announced to be in Derby?
James, is that one for you?
Yeah. So we made a pitch for the GBR headquarters to be in York. If you look at the actual number of jobs that are going to be in that headquarters in Derby, it is relatively modest. Actually, if you like, the bigger prize is such as the Network Rail Eastern Operating Hub being in York and such like from that perspective. So if you look at where the jobs are, York is still really well positioned to that. Of course, we would have loved to have the Great British Rail headquarters in York, but actually, is it going to be anything of a handbrake on our ambitions for innovation and driving that sector in the city? No, it's not, because actually, equally, if you are an innovator in the industry, and you look at the part of Great British Rail that you will want to engage with to innovate, it isn't the head office jobs. It's the Network Rail, it's the engineering parts of it, it's the operating part of the system. That I talked about the anchor tenant of being the bit you want to be near. You want to be near the bit which is relevant to your industry. So if you look at where York's got really, really good businesses, which is around rail innovation, rail engineering, signalling, all that types of things, that's the Network Rail operating side of things. It's not the Great British Rail headquarters. But of course, I would have loved to have had the headquarters as well.
And the gentleman, you've already got your microphone, off you go.
Yeah. Question about Eurostar and this big disconnect between the north of England and London in getting into Europe. At the moment, if you go to Eurostar, you've got to think about the day before getting a train down to London, and you've got to allow at least 2 hours to get between arriving, booking into St Pancras and getting on the Eurostar. Now, what are the plans, if any, to get a straight line from York and indeed Leeds to go straight through the Channel Tunnel? That would be an enormous improvement in business connections between Europe and the north of England. And what, in your plans for the station, has any consideration been given to that for the future?
I think that's one for you, David.
So, really exciting idea, really exciting thinking. It's not in our plans at the moment. We're certainly, I've not been involved in any conversations of that nature. It would be good to think about what does the future of rail look like. So the next few years, this won't happen. But if we look at 10 or more years ahead, when we have Great British Railways, will we see large changes to our network? Will we see innovations? Because at the moment you have a patchwork of different train operating companies. The creation of GBR makes these types of things possible. So not for now, maybe in the future, but I don't know.
Yeah, the thing is, of course, you're taking all this land away from British Rail or whatever at the moment. If you did create a hub for Eurostar, that would take probably a different siding in York Station or whatever to accommodate it. Now, shouldn't that be given some thought at the future at the moment? Because that is the biggest single thing that's preventing this north-south divide, or preventing that north-south divide getting worse. We need to link, everything stops at London when they come from Europe. Get off the train, they're not going to wait 2 hours to get a train up to Leeds or up to York. The business will stop in London. And if we want York to develop, and indeed the old north of England, and the importance of the east-west link line to strengthen that consideration surely must be looked at
So are we future-proofed?
Well, what I would say is the East Coast Main Line is one of the busiest lines in our network. So actually, how you free up capacity on that sort of constrained network at the moment to bring in additional services and new services is very difficult to do, which is why you see things like timetable changes only happening every decade or more, because of the complexities in getting the best out of the system that's there, because you've got a finite number of services that you can run on the tracks that are there already. So there is a challenge there. I guess to your wider point about getting tourists to York, actually we see a lot of our passengers coming up to York from London or from Edinburgh, or perhaps stopping at York for a day or two and then going up to Edinburgh. And the biggest markets for us are the business market and the leisure market, and we see lots of tourists coming out from overseas going to various parts of our network. So we do see that we provide a good offer if you're a tourist into the UK. And I've not heard that point before about links into Europe, but very interesting.
Well, I remember when it was promised when Eurostar first came out.
I was going to say I'm a bit older, so I do remember that, and I
yeah.
think it was a fabulous idea, yes. And I'm still.
You kept waiting for it to appear.
I'm still seriously disappointed that it didn't extend to York, because it kind of echoes a bit of the HS2 thing, doesn't it? Yes. Rather than starting building from both ends, let's start from London and see where it stops. Yeah. So I think it is a disappointment. But going on to the future-proofing piece of that, which I think is the serious point. I think what's happening at York Central with Network Rail is when you come out of the existing station on the old Victorian Bridge and you cross over, I think it's platform 10 and 11, you then drop down into a kind of narrower footbridge, and then it turns and drops you down into the car park. That piece is being removed, and the bridge is going to be full width and extended, and it's going to go beyond where it is now, and they are creating an extra platform or a space for the extra platform under there. That is, none of that space immediately there is being developed by us. It's being kept back by Network Rail for that expansion.
So there's some capacity.
But I'm not saying that's a Eurostar expansion. I'm just saying that's what they are. But I would be very much a supporter of it if it was.
Line and how many trains you can run on it. I mean, it used to be a 4-track system. It's down now a 2-track. And with the consideration, you put a 4-track system back in there, and I know there's a lot of engineering details to do that. But with them stopping HS2 now south of Birmingham, you've now disconnected again the north from the south.
Indeed. So we've
and that issue is only going to aggravate the big economic disadvantage the north is to the south.
I suspect you're preaching to the converted here. We've got 2 questions at the back, and I think they will have to be the last 2. So either order, whoever, right at the very back there's 2 people on the left-hand side.
A point and a question. The point on the plug is to plug Cathy Willis' book, who gave a talk last Saturday, Professor of Biodiversity, on good nature and the importance of incorporating nature into housing developments. Huge research on that. So perhaps every architectural firm involved in this could be made to read it. My question is has any thought been given to a York Parkway? It might tie in with the Eurostar question. I'm thinking of the site at the Park and Ride at Tesco's. Points have been made about the amount of traffic circulating in central York, getting it on and off. A lot of the people who get off those trains or get on those trains will be from the villages who needn't drive into central York to get on the trains. I know it may interfere with timetabling, but often as not, as you're coming back from London, the train waits there anyway, looking for a platform. Thank you.
We support any investment in public transport that helps people get on and off trains, gets them to where they need to be. I can't really comment on the specifics that you mentioned, but in principle, we are always supportive of better ways to connect people in the region to their train station, because not everyone has a car, not everyone is able to drive to the station, and actually we need a selection of different transport modes that connect into our train stations, not just York, but every other train station as well. It needs to be part of an integrated transport network and plan.
James, you look like you wanted to say
something. The Parkway specifically, I don't think that thinking has taken place that I'm aware of. Obviously, the responsibility now for spatial planning of the region is now falling with the Mayor. So obviously the Mayor's a year in, but that responsibility later this year will be given to the Mayor. So we are very much looking at making sure we join up economic growth and the growth corridors with the transport infrastructure as well. And as part of that, we've already signed what's called the White Rose Agreement, which is an agreement with West and South Yorkshire, looking at a Yorkshire level, and White Rose Rail is part of that. So when we're looking at rail, we're already looking at a Yorkshire level, we're already looking at a North of England level. But like I say, we're looking at then the spatial planning within York and North Yorkshire, but we're not at the level where we're starting to consider the points you raise. But I think it's a really valid point.
Thank you. So the final question at the back, please.
Thank you. Just to sort of bring back what I hope is more of the focus on the actual central development rather than perfectly acceptable, but probably slightly more outside the remit of how York needs to cope. Can the panel sort of comment on the sort of environmental and other aspects that have been included within the development? I'm thinking more things like how these houses are going to work with different innovative power supplies and other such things to be more sustainable, and a step in the right process towards moving towards a York environment that is very much energy conscious in every way.
I suspect that's one for Allan.
Another one for me?
Yep.
Yes, a huge part of the work that we've been doing is looking at just that. In terms of design, all of the housing that we're doing at the moment and in the future will be designed at least to a passive house standard. We're actually pushing far beyond that, in all honesty, but it'll all be to at least a passive house standard. In terms of sustainability, if you take a look at sustainability in the round, yes, insulation and kind of construction methodology and everything's seriously important, and you minimise the amount of energy required for heating, etc. But there's a bigger opportunity which we've been working on for the last 12 months and now in collaboration with the university regarding a potential geothermal energy source at York Central. And the university, I think you'll be aware of this, the university have recently received a £35 million grant or something from UKRI to actually start the drilling and stuff.
From DESNES.
Yeah, from DESNES, sorry.
The geothermal, deep geothermal.
To look at deep geothermal. So we did a similar kind of desktop study a year or so ago, and we think there is an opportunity also at York Central. So what we're doing now is the teams are collaborating on that to see how we can drive the best from that opportunity. And so it's a bigger thing now. It's grown into a much bigger thing than just a York Central heating source. We're looking at this now as a kind of strategic thing across the whole of York. But it's being led now by, we thought we were leading, it's now being led by the university.
We get to see if it works.
You get to see if it works, yeah. So yes, we're designing to a high sustainability standard in terms of minimising power requirement. 2, we're looking at how we can get that power from a totally sustainable source rather than it just being a green electricity tariff. And thirdly, we're really pushing the boundaries in terms of embedded carbon, particularly on this innovation space that we're working with James on. We've targeted the team to deliver to us a building on York Central which will house the innovation space, because we wanted to make a statement with this building, and this building needs to be an innovative building in its own right. So what we've targeted the design team to do is to deliver us a building, and this is probably Chinese to a lot of people in the room, which is delivered at under 350 kilos of embedded carbon per square metre of space. That's never been achieved in Europe yet. So it obviously hasn't been achieved in the UK. We're hopeful that by the time this comes forward, it'll still be the leading building in Europe, but I'm confident it'll be the leading building in the UK.
Another reason to do it quickly.
Another reason to get it done quickly, yeah.
Okay, I think that's an excellent note on which to end. So thank you for all your fantastic questions, which have covered a huge remit, but thank you in particular to our three panellists. And we've heard some really good words. World-class and of York, I think, and innovation. Let's add those three words to sum up this session. So thank you to our three excellent panellists for giving us a really expert perspective on both rail and York Central and the future of York. So thank you, everybody.